Merry Christmas Sunday, everybody. It's good to be in the house of the Lord today. I can't think of a better place that I'd want to spend it than with my church family. You know, the long-awaited arrival of Jesus, Messiah, comes to us by way of the miraculous. And we've been spending a lot of time sort of wrapping our minds around the mystery of the miracle of Christmas in recent days and throughout the prophecies of Advent, moving us down to this particular moment. That Christmas story is decorated with miracles from beginning to end, and one of the most popular miracles of Christmas is no doubt that visitation of mysterious travelers from the east. Described in the second chapter of Matthew's gospel, we call them magi or wise men. Who were these strange travelers? Where did they come from, really? East is kind of vague. It's a direction, not a location. How did they even know that the Jewish king was to be born? I mean, what drew them to that particular conclusion? What would motivate them to travel such a distance, assuming it was a fairly long distance, to face the dangers of traveling such a long way at that particular time in history, to undergo such great personal expense? Let's see if we can flesh out some answers to those questions in Matthew's gospel. We'll pick up the reading in chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. And when you have found your place in the Christmas story, Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, we would invite you to stand with us and let us honor the reading of God's word together. Matthew begins the second chapter of the Christmas story by putting us into context. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had called together the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them, "Where is the Messiah to be born?" "Well, in Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Well, then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them exactly the time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child, and as soon as you find him, report to me, that I too may go and worship him." And after they had went on their way, the star they had seen, where it rose and went on ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. And on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother, Mary. They bowed down and worshiped him. They opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of frankincense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. Interesting, at least to me, that for all of the angels' announcements and all of the miraculous dreams and all of the great visions and all of the miracles recorded in the very first chapter of Matthew's gospel, chapter 2 of the Christmas story hardly makes mention of the Holy Family at all. I mean, Joseph doesn't even get a mention in the whole chapter. In chapter 2, the Holy Family sort of fades off of center stage and sort of just blends into the background. And three very different characters step out of the shadows and into center stage. They take the spotlight. And I'd like for us this morning just to take a look at the three characters that sort of step into the spotlight in the second chapter of the Christmas story. The first character to step into the spotlight is no stranger to center stage at all. And in fact, he'd spent most of his, if not all of his adult life, making sure that he was the center of everyone's attention. If he could, he'd be the subject of everyone's sentence. Our text says that Jesus was born in Bethlehem during the time of King Herod. Herod the Great was appointed by Rome to rule Judea, and he did so for 40 years as their governing king. And Herod, he spent those 40 years casting a great vision and advancing a tremendous amount of architectural endeavors, which put Judah on the map, making it like a worldwide significance and a place of trade and commerce. And the economy of Judah boomed under the reign of Herod. Herod's accomplishments included the creation of amphitheaters and monuments and elaborate pagan shrines and magnificent state-of-the-art palaces and fortresses carved out into the hillside of Judea. His greatest accomplishment, however, by far, was the completion of the temple of God in Jerusalem, known as Herod's temple. There were only three, right? There's Solomon's original, and then the temple that was rebuilt after exile, and then, of course, Herod's temple here. Herod was a ruthless taskmaster, gaining strength and popularity around the world by oppressing Jewish slaves whom he exploited, by forcing them to complete his grand construction projects. He overworked the Jewish people, and he overtaxed the Jewish people. And when Herod ruled, he ruled with a total disregard for human life. Herod is known to have had his own wife executed, 3 of his own sons executed, his mother-in-law, 1 brother-in-law, his uncle, among countless others that he thought were a threat to his power. Herod would not permit anyone to challenge his authority or take the spotlight from him. History describes King Herod as an unstable dictator, power-hungry, self-absorbed, a ruthless, controlling oppressor. It's not somebody you want to invite over for Christmas dinner. Certainly not the one who would tolerate a simple rumor of another king born in his land that would challenge his control. And so that upon hearing that there might be one born in his kingdom, a king of the Jews, Herod is described as being troubled. And the text says that all Jerusalem was troubled with him, because when Herod the Great was unhappy, heads were going to roll. Someone was going to suffer. There would be blood. So under that kind of threat, a second group now sort of enters the drama, the chapter, taking center stage. A second group of characters that Herod summons. He calls the religious leaders and the teachers of the law. Essentially, he calls in his nemesis, those who oppose him, and ask the question, where is it that the King of the Jews is to be born? These are a gathering of the learned scholars. The secrets of wisdom and prophecy have been granted to these. These are folks who grew up in the synagogue. They knew the ancient language. They knew the ancient faith stories. They sang the great hymns of the faith. They're the holy people who have dedicated their lives to God in faithful service to him, in spite of Herod's rule and Roman occupation of their land. They learned the songs and the expressions at a very young age. And if God's Messiah were to be born in their lifetime, they were the people who would know it. Everyone else might be caught off guard. These are the religious fanatics. They have dedicated their lives to watching and waiting and praying and hoping. If the Messiah were to be born, they would certainly know. Herod's question for them: where is it that the King of the Jews is going to be born? They quote him the passage of Scripture out of the prophet Micah chapter 5, verse 2. But you, O Bethlehem, though you are small of the clans of Judah, out of you will come one for me who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from old and from ancient times. Everyone knows. Everyone knows that the true King of Israel will be born in Bethlehem, and that King Herod the Great was born in a land called Idumea, not even really Jewish. The scholars may know where the king is to be born, but they appear to be unaware that he has already arrived. Shame on them. I think it's safe to assume that if anyone would have known or should have known, it would have been them. If the true king of Judah was going to be born, surely he would have been born, we think, in, I don't know, one of Herod's elaborate palaces, with the most educated and experienced midwives, with all of the comforts and amenities that the royal court could provide and afford, with the latest technologies. So that if a stranger, say, perhaps traveling through a foreign land and looking for the new king of the Jews, it would make perfect logical sense that your first stop would be at Herod's world-famous palace among the scholars who have been watching and waiting for his birth for centuries. It doesn't make sense for the Magi to look anywhere else for the king. I find it exceedingly odd that, maybe even bordering on humorous, that as the Magi arrive to join a national worship to the newborn king of Judea, nobody in the land has a clue that he's even been born. The Magi must have thought these are either the most rude, ungrateful, uncivilized people on the face of the earth, or they are so ignorant and stupid that they have no idea that their king has even been born to them at all. I mean, what nation fails to elaborately celebrate the birth of their king? And here we enter the third set of characters to take center stage: the wise men from the east. Scriptures call them magi, which is more of an appropriate, I think, title. It holds on to the mystery. I mean, honestly, what is a magi anyway? Nobody really knows for certain. I mean, there is evidence throughout history to suggest that they were maybe kings of sorts, or they were magicians or scientists. And way back then, in the time of Jesus' birth, there's not such a hard line between magic and science. One was just as good as the other. Were they religious, priestly? Were they astrologers, wealthy, independent scholars? Well, one thing for sure, they weren't Jewish, that's clear. Tradition holds that there were three of them, I'm not sure. But we don't know that for certain either. All we know is that they were three gifts. Odds are pretty good that in order for them to make the trip from the east to where they were to the place where they landed, they would have to travel in such a large caravan in order to protect themselves, because there were strength in numbers, move through that dangerous, perilous journey. And as they, I assume, marched into the central city of Judea to ask where the king of the Jews is, I suspect that they were probably thinking to themselves, we'll join the caravans of other nationalities who have come to join in worship and celebration of the newborn king, only to be disappointed that nobody seems to know anything about him. I think it's fairly certain we can assume that they traveled a long, long journey, although they were probably unaware that the most dangerous part of their journey was their arrival that day in Herod's palace, announcing the birth of King Herod's replacement. The story is pretty straightforward from here on out. Herod attempts to use the zealous determination of the Magi to help himself find the baby king. Nobody really believed for a moment that Herod wanted to join the Magi in any sort of worshiping of the child. He wanted to eliminate the competition and secure his power and control here at center stage. There wasn't a lot of help for the Magi found in Herod's palace among the religious scholars. They just pointed them in the general direction of Bethlehem. That's where they say the king is supposed to be born. And so the Magi do what Magi do, I guess. They follow the Christmas star that eventually stops and comes to rest over the house where the Holy Family stays. And upon entering the house, finally, at last, the weary travelers were able to do what they came for. They worshiped the king. They came to adore the king. And I wonder, how many times along their difficult journey had they asked the question, is this really worth it? Worth all of the time and money and energy and effort, and especially after they arrive in the holy city and they look around and no one else seems to really care that the king was born. And how many times that they had stopped and asked for directions and for lodging and they wondering, are we actually going to make it to our destination? How often through that time had they doubted their calculations? They doubted the direction of the star. They doubted the legitimacy of their own mission. And now, finally, they arrive at the humble home, we assume, of the Christ child. And all that they had encountered, and all that they had to overcome, and all that they had invested in, and all that they had endured there in that moment at that time of worship suddenly became more sweet than anything else. If it wasn't for the obstacles or the barriers and the challenges that set up, everything suddenly became worship. And in my imagination, I say that for all of their efforts to find him, their worship in that moment must have been as pure and selfless as the angels in heaven. As they're worshiping, they're opening up their gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh, costly gifts brought fit for a king. After putting their own lives at risk, they offer him the worship that they had come to bring. Gold and incense and myrrh, proper gifts for a king. Authentic worship, you see, it always costs you something. Always costs something. The worship of a king requires our very best. To come without an offering, to come without our best, is to simply engage in some kind of nice, sentimental feelings about the king. Now, authentic worship costs us something. When we gather and we don't offer our very best, we fail, actually, to participate in the story. And we become spectators, watching stuff that's taking place. But the scriptures and the faith, they never ask us to spectate. They always invite us in to participate. Worship always requires an offering. In chapter 2 of Matthew's gospel, here at the second chapter of the Christmas story, there are three characters that take center stage. I wonder where we find ourselves participating in the Christmas story today. The first character is that self-absorbed ruler, commander of his or her own world. And it's easy for us to sit in our pews, I think, and detest this person, right? So this is the guy, the villain of the story, and everybody sitting in the pew and everybody hearing the Christmas story thinks to themselves, this is surely not me. This is the antagonist of the story. I could be anyone else in the story, but I'm certainly not that person. This person, the self-absorbed ruler, the commander of his or her own world, this person is the king of their own empire. They call the shots for their lives. They reserve veto power over any suggestion, God's included. If this is really going to happen for me, I'm the one who's going to decide what takes place. As such, as a ruler of my own small little kingdom, there's no room in my kingdom for two kings. One of us is going to call the shots. One of us is going to make the rules. I'm not going to answer to anybody. No room in my life for a real Messiah. Jesus means change. Jesus questions my motives and my actions. Jesus challenges my relationships. He challenges my addictions, and he demands control. Suddenly, it's not so simple, right? It's not so simple as just not having any room in my busy life for the kingdom of Jesus. Jesus has become a threat to my way of being in the world. He challenges control over my kingdom. He represents a shift in power from me to him. And if we're honest, it might be better for you, for me, if Jesus were dead and gone. And that way he can make no demands on my life, and he can have no influence over my politics or how I spend my money or my relational policies. This morning, Herod appears on center stage. And I wonder if we love our lives so much that we will be found among him as the spotlight shines. There's another group of people who appear on center stage this morning. It's the religious scholars, the religious people. We grew up in church. We learned the language of Christian tradition. We can speak about holiness and consecration and sanctification and grace and forgiveness and use all the words that we only hear in church. No, we studied the scriptures. We've read through our Bibles. We've watched and we've waited and we've prayed. We've sung in the choir. We've taught Sunday school class in small groups, and we've served in positions of church leadership. And we have access to all of the wisdom of Christendom throughout the centuries, and the secrets of prophecy are just a click or a couple keystrokes away. Never, ever in history have we ever had so much information about the faith than we do right. Never have we known so much than we do today. We have access to all of this stuff. And if it was just a matter of knowing, everybody would be Christian. It's not that they don't have enough knowledge or access to knowledge. That's not really the issue. It's not for us. And it wasn't for the religious scholars either. See, there's a big difference between knowing about God and experiencing Him. Having all of the answers to all of the God questions is no substitute for full participation in His kingdom. Today, this morning, the scholars and religious leaders are present at center stage, and I wonder, will we be found among them? And then there are those mysterious travelers from the East. We hardly know anything at all about them. They capture our imagination. If you can close your eyes, you can dress them in the fancy colors of some imaginative, distant land. Who ventures out with such great faith? Who have faced so many obstacles and dangers. And how long have they traveled? Has it been months, weeks? Has it been years? And they're traveling. Magi who persevered past their questioning through the struggle to reach the one they had already set their hearts upon finding. They undertook at great personal cost and at great expense to seek the King whom they knew in their hearts would somehow be worthy of their efforts, though I'm sure they didn't know exactly how. And when they had found what they had been seeking, they entered the house and they worshiped Him. They presented Him with gifts that indicate how valuable and important and precious to them He is. Mysterious worshipers from the East are also present this morning at center stage, and I wonder if we will be found among them. Why have we come? Why are we here on this Christmas Sunday? How long was the journey that brought you here? Not just from your doorstep to the parking lot, but your life woven together in all of its details and its history. All your successes and your failures, your 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, and all of the opportunities and challenges. And I don't know about you, but my life is certainly not presently in the way that I imagined it when I was 15 or 20. But here, through all of our relationships and circumstances, what were the dangers and obstacles we faced? Why have we come this Christmas? What is it that has brought us together at this place? What or who have we come seeking this morning? And have we brought our gift? Have we gathered up our very best? See, mysterious worshipers from the East are present with us this morning. I wonder if we could join them and fully engage and participate in the second chapter of the Christmas story together. If you have come seeking and worshiping the Christ, then I would suggest that as we close our service today, we would continue that exercise, continue seeking and worshiping, and come and gather together and let us adore him for now and forever, that we might be found with those mysterious people who just sort of show up on the pages of the Christmas story, fully engaged and ready to participate in worship.